You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 154. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast. Today we will be talking, it's a fun topic, on building unshakable self-trust and how to do that. But first, I want to remind you, if you have not yet signed up onto my email list to learn about my Black Friday specials that are coming, now is the time to do that. It is very simple. Go to 90dayslater.co/list. I am going to be launching a number of offers of really great deals, and this is the place I will do it first before I do it publicly. The deals will be limited strictly to a certain number of people. So if you think you're going to want one of these, get on my list now. All right, let's get on with the show. So today I want to talk about self-trust, and I thought I would start with why this matters. And I think this is really because it's about a commitment you are making to yourself, right? So whether that means a commitment you're making to reduce your own alcohol consumption, or even any other goal. It could just be you want to also work out every morning. And the thing I find about changing my habits around so that I operate them from a sense of trust is that it becomes a no-brainer, right? It's that I'm going to run every other day. I just will. That's what it is. Self-trust is critical and a cornerstone to success in area of your life, right? Because think about it. When you trust yourself, what do you become? You become someone who follows through no matter how difficult the circumstances, no matter what anyone else is saying, no matter what else might have just happened. You just do it. And the way I see this show up a lot for my clients is that when you are a highly functioning high achiever, you may operate already with a high degree of trust, right? You expect and trust yourself to perform in various settings, whether that's at work, whether it's regard to deadlines, whatever that may be, you just know you'll do it. But then when it comes to personal commitments, and particularly when it comes to your drinking, perhaps if you think you've been struggling with this, it's almost confusing as to how hard it is to trust yourself to follow through, right? You are operating basically from a very, very low perspective. So today we're going to do a deep dive into what it takes to build self-trust, why discomfort is part of the process. Yes, you might not like that piece, but we need to talk about discomfort with regard to trust. We'll talk about how taking full responsibility for your choices is going to empower you. It's going to empower you to succeed. I mean, just the beautiful thing that is. And then how this increased level of self-trust will have a ripple effect, and it will transform every part of your life. And I'm also going to touch on how changing your relationship with alcohol can be a really powerful first step towards building that sense of trust for you with you, right? What you drink, how much you drink, and whether you trust yourself or not to drink is just one element of your life. And the tools you learn here, these are meta skills, right? These are meta skills that will help you to transform trust in other parts of your life. Okay, let's get started. And I want to start with a dream. I want you to start with the dream of always doing what you say, right? So you now live in always doing what you say land. Right, so imagine a world or a land where you always follow through with what you promise to yourself. Always. So what would that mean for different elements of your life? Food choices. What would it feel like to only eat what you had planned? To never overindulge, to never mindlessly snack because you've committed to a healthy eating plan, right? You just trust yourself. It's just a no-brainer. It just happens. Fitness. How would your life change if you never skipped a workout? If every time you said you do exercise, you actually did it, even when you didn't feel like it? And maybe procrastination. What if you always tackled your tasks on time and never let fear or hesitation hold you back from maybe working on the big project or making the important call? What if you just always did what you said you would? I want you to just sit and pause and imagine that for a second. In all areas of your life, you always did that. I want you to imagine how you'd feel. I mean, for me, what springs up is an increased sense of confidence in myself, pride, and also this sense of empowerment. Not only that I'm much more likely to get my desired results, right? If you're taking the action towards your goals, you're much more likely to get the results, but also in how I'm showing up and how I'm showing up for myself, and that this is a choice, the choice to do this, and I'm doing it for me. How would you feel if you were showing up for yourself in that way? You probably already do this in a public persona, right? Where you are showing up for your employer, you're showing up for your clients, you're showing up for your family. You probably trust yourself to do that, and they trust you to do that. So we just want to take that and really expand it, what it means for when it comes to you and you, right? Personal matters. So that we can flip the question from why do I never learn, right? Why do I always drink more than I say I will, to trusting yourself to always drink exactly what you said you would. Now, when I ask people to consider this place, right, this of living in, always doing what you say you will land, most people say, yes, that would be amazing, Anna. I would love to be that person. But how do I do it, right? They struggle to get there. It's in the execution where it all falls apart. And I want you to see that many highly functioning individuals have super good intentions, and we might have a lot of good intentions, which is, by the way, another topic. But what happens is when we get faced with some discomfort or fear, or things don't seem like they're going to be as smooth as they will be, we sort of fall short. It's not due to any lack of capability, but because building self-trust takes conscious effort and really a willingness to confront any internal resistance you might be feeling. So when I look at the foundations of building self-trust, I really have to start with being willing to sit in discomfort. Discomfort is just a part of any significant change, whether it's changing a relationship with alcohol, sticking to an exercise routine, maybe deciding I'm just going to get a new job, finish writing a book. Any of that stuff, discomfort is inevitable. And in many ways, I always say that when you feel uncomfortable, it shows that it's working, because our brains are quite happy to stay on the same habit loop, doing the same thing again and again and again. And the minute you start to wrestle with that and say, no, I want something different for myself, and you feel this discomfort, that is a normal part of being a human. Now, what can typically happen is many people, they drink as a way to avoid this discomfort, right? So we say we're going to do this big thing, or it could even be a small thing, but we say we're going to do that. All the discomfort comes up. We don't like how that feels. Maybe it feels awkward. Maybe it feels stressful. Maybe it feels boring. Maybe it feels challenging, whatever it is. And then we say we want to avoid it. And then we're going to drink. We drink to avoid it, because then we don't have to think about it, and we don't have to do the action, and we can put it off to the future, which is kind of another loop there on trusting yourself around to not procrastinate. Right? So when you commit to drinking less or not at all, even just making that commitment, just thinking about that, you are likely to experience discomfort. It could be the discomfort of what that's going to mean, of how bad it's going to be, how hard it's going to be, any of those things. But discomfort is the basis, right? The very place from where self-trust is built. Now, why do we avoid discomfort? I have covered this many, many times on the podcast. We are wired. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, and then to do that as regularly and as efficiently as possible. This is why we procrastinate, skip workouts, or reach for a drink at the end of a stressful day. But every time we do that, every time we actually actively avoid the discomfort, we see it coming and we sort of head it off, we are sending a message to ourselves that we cannot handle it. And over time, that chips away at our self-trust. So like I said just now, it's actually, I think, a positive thing. It shows that change is working. So I want you to reframe discomfort as a sign of growth. The more you're willing to feel uncomfortable and still follow through, the stronger your self-trust becomes. You are basically training yourself to trust that you can handle the discomfort, rather than training yourself to believe that you do not trust yourself to handle the discomfort. You see how that goes? Now let's take an example of a social situation. At first, it's going to feel awkward or maybe isolating to be somewhere without having a drink, maybe to be the only one not having a drink, or at least to be the one who always used to have the drinks and then to now not be drinking so much. If you just go towards and these feelings and do not make these feelings a problem, over time that level of discomfort is going to fade and you're going to feel a deeper sense of confidence. And so much so you might find it easy. I remember a recent coaching session with a client where she was going to an event and she had decided she was going to go alcohol free, but it was an event she didn't really like. She knew everyone would be drinking. It was one of those where she would drink because she would feel a bit awkward. And we sort of talked over it and went through, looked at the obstacles and did a plan and did the whole thing. And she was ready and prepared for it. And she said it really wasn't so bad. But that's not even the piece I want to focus on here. Just for her to know that if she sat and thought about it and then could go towards it and would trust herself, follow through on that, that meant that she would be willing to try this again, right? So it's not just about that one-off result. It stops being a fluke and it starts to be something that you can create on demand. Because think about it, the discomfort of following through on your commitments, and there will be discomfort, is really a small price to pay for the immense reward of self-trust, right? It's in those moments where real growth happens. Now, I want to talk for a moment about radical responsibility, right? This is about there being no blame, only ownership. Self-trust is built on the foundation of responsibility. Every time you make a choice, whether it's to drink, skip a workout, procrastinate, or do the project, not have the drink, do the workout, that's your decision. There is no one else to blame or no other factor to blame. So for instance, if it's raining and I wake up and I think, oh, I'm not going to go running because it's raining, it's not the rain's fault that I don't run or the rain's fault if I do run. It's only mine, no one else. And when you start to really own all of those choices, even if you really fundamentally could tell me, no, it's this other person's fault why I drank, because they wouldn't let up. They would, they kept buying me this and putting the drink in my hand and all the rest of it. It is still yours. I mean, I really want you to see what is the upside on thinking it's the other person's fault versus you just accepting the blame. And this, so owning your choices means acknowledging that external factors are certainly influences, but they do not finally determine your actions. Why is this important when it comes to self-trust? Well, when we blame others or other external circumstances, we are giving away our trust. We're giving away our power. It becomes easier. It's just easier to say I drank because everyone else was drinking, or I skipped my workout because work was too stressful. Now, it might be that those things are quote unquote true, but blaming yourself and blaming your lack of action for that on those reasons will undermine your ability to trust yourself. So I want you to imagine you had a long day at work and you come home exhausted. You have planned to work out, but instead you skip that and you want to watch the TV instead. Now, rather than blaming your employer for your choice, right, because they overworked me, I'm so stressed, you could say instead, and I suggest you say this out loud, I chose to skip my workout because I felt tired. Or I chose to have the drink because I felt tired. Now, saying this is probably going to hurt. You're probably going to want to cringe. In fact, on my coaching calls, when my clients come out and say things like this, they kind of come face to face with the truth, they generally grimace, right? We don't want to hear these things. But once it's out in the open, then we can start dealing with it. We stop wanting to run a mile from it and we think, oh, it's actually, yeah, of course, right? And then we can get to neutrality and move forward. And this level of honesty and ownership is going to allow you to learn from the experience rather than feeling a victim of your circumstances. And when you do this, you need to see this and be willing to take different action. And that's again where trust begins. Because when you take full responsibility, you realize that no matter what, you have control over your choices, and success or failure is entirely within your hands. Now, the ripple effect that I spoke about in the introduction, this is such a cool thing that happens. Because once you build self-trust in one area, that is going to naturally spill over into others. You are going to change as a person. For instance, when you trust yourself to drink less or follow through on a workout, you're going to start trusting yourself to do other things, whether that means to stick to a work deadline or maybe to speak up at a meeting or whatever it is. It's going to give you the confidence to go through life in a different way. So let's have a quick look at some of how this could influence other parts of your life, right? Because drinking just happens to be something we do, but it influences so much of what we do in life. Think about self-trust, building self-trust in your career, right? That is going to give you the confidence maybe to ask for an increase, for a bonus, apply for promotion, or maybe even start a side business because you know you can handle discomfort. You're less afraid to take risks. If you increase your level of self-trust, it's going to break the cycle of procrastination. I used to sit in this for so long, for so many years, because procrastination often stems from fear or discomfort. But when you trust yourself to act, even when it's uncomfortable, you're going to stop procrastinating. You're going to start doing what you say you're going to do, not because it's easy, but because you know you can count on yourself. How does that feel? And then let's think about better relationships, right? Self-trust improves relationships. When you trust yourself, you're less likely to people please. You're less likely to overextend yourself. You can set boundaries and say no when needed because you are confident in your own decisions and you are not reliant on others' approval. Now, let me spend a few minutes saying why I think all of that is within your grasp. If you start with alcohol, I think changing a relationship with alcohol is such a powerful starting point. I know I felt this. Alcohol, it just felt like such a challenge, like the big challenge, the mountain challenge, the challenge I didn't want to go near, the challenge I had to sort of, get myself ready for. And I really, really started to think, if you can do that, Anna, really, what else are you capable of? I mean, these other things, I would sometimes procrastinate on a work project and okay, so that was a less a major problem than the drinking. You get the drinking solved. Of course you can do the procrastination. Of course you do not have to sit within that story. You will like who you see. Now, if you like yourself now, you'll start to like yourself more. If you don't like yourself now, then you please start doing this. And start by considering maybe you've made a commitment to only drink on weekends. Now, the first time you're going to be invited to an event during the week, it might be tough to stick to your promise. But when you do that, you're going to prove to yourself that you're someone who follows through, and that is going to create a positive feedback loop. You're going to become more confident in your ability to do that. And you are not going to see the feelings as a stop sign. So now I'm going to give you some practical steps you can start using to build self-trust starting today. Today, not one day. First, I want you to make small, specific promises to yourself. Start with something that really is achievable, that you're willing to do. Could be as simple as planning to drink a specific amount of water each day, committing to a short workout. It could be that I'm just going to drink a glass of water with lunch. Something simple. I know you've heard this, but how many of you, when you hear that, do you actually do it? So I want you to follow through on this. The second thing you're going to do, I want you to embrace discomfort, and I want you to reposition it, reframe it as the fuel for growth. If you're feeling uncomfortable, it means things are changing. And I want you to remind yourself that this is how that level of self-trust is built, because if you can feel any feeling, you're willing to do all of the things. When you fall short, I want you to avoid the temptation of beating yourself up, but to only reflect on what happened, own it and learn from it. And really, again, do this. I know you hear this all the time. It's like journaling. People say journal, do this. And you think, oh yeah, that's so good. And then how many times do you not do it? So when things go wrong, when you screw up, and you own it, I want you to look at it and see what happened. Then you are not lying to yourself. Not lying to yourself. How could that be a first step to building self-trust? And then fourthly, I want you to celebrate successes and really take time to acknowledge every time you follow through, no matter how small. And I really, really want to jump up and down on this one. It really doesn't matter how small. You've got to start taking ownership when things go right, because you are very quick to take ownership when things don't go right. Because it feels so much better as well. If we're starting to see that we're making small changes and we are having a difference, that is going to do wonders. It's like rocket fuel for self-trust. So I want to leave you with a question. I want you to think about what your life would look like if you completely trusted yourself. Really go there. We did that little piece of work earlier in the podcast. Just think about this. Get to know that person. What goals would you be pursuing? How would you be handling challenges? How would you feel that you know you can always rely on yourself in any situation? What would you be doing? Would you be looking? How would you be dressing? Who you'd be hanging out with? Yes, this is in the realm of visualization, but it's more than just imagining the result. I want you to understand how it would feel to be in that scenario. And remember, and this was something that worked for me and has turned out to be a brilliantly powerful thought. I always like to give thoughts to think. Remember that changing your relationship with alcohol can be a catalyst for a much larger transformation. Because by building self-trust in one area, and in this area in particular, that can unlock your potential in every other area of your life. And imagine who you would be then. Whew. All right, that's it for today. Again, don't forget, with Black Friday coming up, you want to get your hands on one of my specials, my limited deals. You're going to need to be on my email list because they know about it first. So 90dayslater.co/list. Otherwise, I will see you next week.